Hey there humans, Shieff here, and today I'm coming with another book review. This is a little different book from the usual reviews I've been doing so far. It's been more spirit world, afterlife type books. That absolutely fascinates me. But this one is one that I saw recommended by a lady called Axline, who I recently met in Brighton at sort of a small little Divine Truth get together, and I checked out her YouTube channel after meeting her. And she got some great videos on there, and one of them was a book review for this book, which is Dibs in Search of Self. This book interested me because it's sort of about the psychology of a young child and how that's shaped and moulded by its environment, the parents, and how their emotional state affects the child's emotional state, and the child's ability to express their emotional state can affect how well they connect with everything around them, how they develop as a human. And because I'm looking at my own childhood and how things from then that I may not have fully processed affecting me now, that's one reason I'm fascinated to learn this kind of stuff about children, as well as I've always considered myself pretty good with children, or like playful and fun around children. But my partner Hayley, who you might have seen in the last video, has a 5-year-old son called Neo, and I've spent some time living in the same house with Neo, and through that experience of considering myself good with children when it's, for an hour or two as a fun uncle, it's a different experience when you're living with a child. And I noticed a lot of patterns of myself unloving things that I'd be drawn to do, either try to guide him or control him with my own anger or frustration, which is certainly not loving, or even little things where I want to just tease him a little in a little fun way that feels playful, but actually it's not that loving, and actually might isn't a nice thing to do. And just to start to try to understand myself in that, try to understand this 5-year-old and how I can be more loving to him, and so the more I can understand him is a better way for me to then grow and be able to be more loving in helping anytime I'm around him. I don't want that to come out as a negative consequence, for that. And so this book, Dibs, is a 5-year-old boy. This was written in 1964. It's a true story of a psychologist who had this child. They changed the name to Dibs from what it originally was to protect his, keeping anonymous. I bought the book secondhand on Amazon. I like the fact that you can do that quite easily there, and the person left a nice little magnet in there. Believe in your dreams. And so to the book itself, Dibs is a 5-year-old boy in a school group setting, and it starts off with a few chapters of how he interacts with the other children, or doesn't interact. Essentially, is he just doesn't speak to anyone. If people try to interact with him too forcefully, he fights. He'll try to fight or scratch or bite people. He just skirts around the edge of the room. He sits with his back to everyone else. Very shut down child. And they're debating whether he's actually mentally retarded as a child, and his mother and his father aren't sure if he's mentally retarded. And so they take this last ditch option to try this type of therapy called play therapy. So they take him to this therapist, and he meets this one therapy lady who he calls Miss A eventually, and they meet once a week for 1 hour, and it's essentially the transcripts from these interactions with this lady who's written the book, who he called Miss A but is Virginia M. Axline. And it's these transcripts as this child goes to these sessions and explores this play therapy, and the woman who leads it. There's one example I want to share of her approach to him that I found really fascinating, and I thought there's a big takeaway for me in how I can approach children in a better way. So it's coming to the end of the hour session, and she says, there are 5 more minutes, I said. Then we will have to go. He sat on the floor in front of the dollhouse. He neither moved nor spoke. Neither did I. When the 5 minutes were up, we would go back to his room. I didn't ask him if he wanted to go. There was no real choice for him to make. I didn't ask him if he would like to come back again. He might not want to commit himself. Besides that, decisions were not up to him to make. I didn't say that I would see him next week, because I had not yet completed the plans with his mother. This child has been hurt enough without my introducing promises that might not materialize. I didn't ask him if he had a good time. Why should he be pinned down to an evaluation of the experience he had just had? If a child's play is his natural way of expressing himself, why should we cast it in a rigid mould of a stereotyped response? A child is only confused by questions that have been answered by someone else before he is asked. When the 5 minutes had passed, I rose and said, "It is time to go now, Dibs." He slowly stood up, took my hand, and we left the room and started down the hall. So I really like that approach that she took, of being open, of not projecting, of not having expectations or not putting pressure on him to respond a certain way, or to leave things to his choice that weren't his choice, or to make false promises to the child that may not be able to be kept. And I just think there's so many times it's so easy to be out of integrity with our words around children because we think they're just children and they're not going to hold us to something, and we can be so flippant. And I think it's a really poignant point to just be precise with everyone, but especially children who we think is the easiest time to not have to be precise with. So I don't feel like I need to say too much more, because the book essentially is how this relationship builds over weeks and months, and how the child essentially starts to find himself and come out of his shell. Somewhat I'd say thanks to the approach that the therapist takes in this book. And so it's not the thickest book. It's only 24 chapters, 190 or so pages. And I really like the second to last chapter in particular, as Dibs actually starts to ponder the question of, does God exist or not? Why do some people believe in God? Why do some people not? But I don't want to ruin that for you if you're going to read it. So essentially that's it. For those that know me know I really like to study the teachings of divine truth. I think the fact that Maxine shared it showed that it has a lot of alignment with that. My take on it is I feel like it has a lot of alignment with what they teach as well. So it's just nice to see that other people around the world are coming to the same solutions and conclusions around teaching and raising children with love. And so I thought that was really cool. So this is a bit shorter than my normal book review. I have recently just finished, if you saw my Lake District video, you would have seen I just finished Autobiography of a Soul in Paradise, the Robert James Lee's trilogy, Through the Mist, Beyond the Veil, Gate of Heaven. Yes, Gate of Heaven. And so I've just finished that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. I feel like I want to reread the first one and then review them in order. So I don't really want to just review the third one without doing the first. That feels fair. I also just finished, for the first time, Angelic Revelations of Divine Truth, which is another Divine Truth book that has been recommended. I think that book's almost like everything that is missing from the Bible, and I know some people might not like this, but what I feel some corrections could be for the Bible, the things that have been edited out along the way of how we can connect to our Father, Mother, God through prayer, through God's divine love entering our soul that really saves us, not through Jesus dying on a cross. His blood can't save us, but I guess that's a whole discussion for another time. But essentially, Angelic Revelations of Divine Truth, some incredible passages in there, channeled messages from, I think it was Socrates, Plato, whether you believe these are actually the people or not, that's how you want to take it away. Daniel, Moses, Elias, Jesus, John the Baptist, loads of cool channel messages. And when you read them, if you take it how you take it. If that sounds like something you might like, I'd definitely say check out that book. Really powerful stuff. It's a really thick book, but I got it on the Kindle, and I went through it. It took me 2 years to get through it. I'd dip in and out for every few months. I'd come back to it and eventually got through it. But that took some amazing takeaways. I've highlighted some amazing passages which I may do something on in the future. Also, I'm currently reading this book, about halfway through now. If you saw my last video on the nettle juice, I just finished. Today's the last day of, I'm ending it today, the 5-day juice fast I'm recently doing. And I'm trying to approach my diet with more of a look at the emotions that are affecting the way I eat, rather than blaming the foods that I'm eating. And so this book, someone else, Courtney, who's follows Divine Truth as well, recommended this book. So I probably might do, we'll see, a book review on that when I finish that, if I feel drawn to. So I'm going on holiday in a couple of days. I'm taking my Kindle. I do love the Kindle for books and highlighting passages. And I'm about to start. I've seen this book recommended many times in all the right circles, 30 Years Among the Dead. So actually quite excited to start another afterlife book. We'll get into that, and I'll probably share about that as well. So that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate the views, the eyes, the time, the openness, the comments, the likes, the subscription, whatever you want to give. I'm easy either way. Maybe see you on the next one. Godspeed.